Hey, it is time for another TechBiz tutorial. Mr. Peterson here again, and this is a graphic design 1 project we're working on. We've been learning about typography, the study of different typefaces to use, when it's appropriate to use different ones, how they should be spaced. There's different ways you can incorporate lettering into your designs. Even though in graphic design the first thing that comes into our mind is images and pictures, the use of letters is important. You can even have your artwork just be type. You can have typography prints that you're selling to people, or it could be environmental design of phrases and quotes on walls. So that's kind of what we've been learning about this week, and our project is going to be making a typography print, and I'm going to show you a few different ways that you could pursue this to create your work for this assignment. Alright, so I'm in Adobe Photoshop here, and I want to go to Create New. The size of this, I'm just rolling with 24 inches wide by 18 inches tall for the first example. 24 by 18 is a common print size. There's all sorts of different standards that you can use, and you can find them just by Google searching. So if you want to make something and you want to have it framed, maybe look at the size of the frame you like, and then make the canvas of your Photoshop be a size that's going to fit inside the frame. So that would be like a piece of advice that you could have for that. So 24 by 18 and 72 resolution. If I was going to print this out, I would increase the resolution up to maybe like 300 if I was taking it to a nice printer, where it could be printed out with the detail. The resolution is important when we're dealing with print, but since what I'm creating is going to be of a digital nature, I'm keeping the resolution at 72, and I'm going to go to create. Alright, here we go. So the first thing that we could do for this is just a regular typography print. It could be, the one I'm going to do is just kind of a little, I don't know, just kind of a team pride. I'm going to make a Philadelphia Eagle themed one. Maybe you want to make one for your high school, or you want to make one for your favorite college, or you have a quote that you really like. So looking through my typefaces, and I kind of knew what I was going to do before I got this far. Obviously I'd put some thought into this a little bit, so I knew that this was the typeface that I wanted to use. Now if you are deciding to create something, I spend a lot of time going through, highlighting the text, looking at different typefaces. I spend a lot of time with that. So as a good designer, many of you are, you will do the same thing. But so I'm not just picking this typeface right away to try to, because it was just lucky start. It was something that I had spent some time kind of looking at for this ahead of time. So let's go ahead and get started. So I will type fly in here. Alright, and then I can Control T this and resize it. And I'm not real sure how I'm going to do the layout of this quite yet. Time will tell, I guess. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer, and then maybe move this layer here, move that down here to the bottom, about like so. And then if I duplicate this again, move that here, then I will put Eagles. Alright, now kind of looking at the spacing of this, you know, I wanted something that was kind of a sports type of a typeface, and something that kind of was at an angle and had some sharp edges, you know, for movement of the letters and all that. Alright, that looks decent there. And then what I might do is I might try these. Maybe go with the fly back here, and then I might just try to overlap this just a little bit here and see how that might look. Alright, so that's a good start. Now for the colors of this, if you want to make this an actual team color, I'm just going to go to Google here, and I want to go Philadelphia Eagles Midnight Green. And usually if you search for something like that, the actual team official colors, you can find those colors pretty easily. So this one here is going to be 004C55. Alright, so let's go here, go to my color, 004C55. Alright, and then I'm going to copy that, and that'll be for the Eagles part there. And then here, what I am thinking about doing, I could do this a couple of different ways, but we'll see. We'll see how this looks first. I'm actually going to go to my layer style for that typeface, and I want to put a stroke around the outside of this. Maybe this one will be like 5 around the outside. And the color to start with, I'm going to try black and see if I like it. Alright, I may switch it to that green, I'm not really sure, or I might go with the gray. We'll kind of see. So that's around the outside. Then I want to go up here to blending options, and I want to go to the fill opacity and take that out. Okay, so I could go something kind of like that, and then maybe if I move this a little bit, move it down into here, and then let me try and copy that layer style, and then go here to fly copy, and then paste layer style, and there I have this print. Alright, so this would be, you know, that's fairly centered. I think that's okay. And it would be kind of an example of something that we could do for this. So just for this example, this would be something you could do. You know, if you're a Husker fan, you could say "Go Big Red," or you could "Go Army, beat Navy, sing second," or whatever team that you like. Sometimes you'll have the teams that'll say something like "Be gold, wear purple," or "Be gold, wear blue." If you have, you know, whatever your phrases are for your group that you want to make these. Alright, so that's kind of what I have for this first one. The only other thing I may do, and I'm just going to see if I like this or not, I'm going to check on here and maybe kind of go with a grayish color, and use my paint bucket tool on this background layer and maybe go with maybe a little lighter gray than that. I'm just kind of thinking ahead a little bit for what I want to do on this, but that's an example of something that we could do for this print here. Yeah, I don't dislike that too much. What if we try one other thing here? I mean, it's pretty plain, but I could go into the fly and change that fill opacity up, but then make that color inside there be white, and that will kind of, you know, sometimes you just want to kind of play around with the letters here, you know, with these styles, and also with the layout, like the order of which they're at. So maybe this one here, I'll bring that one up as well, and then have this one be, yeah, we'll do that, and then change the color of that one to white also. But then maybe I want to bring that up to the front so it's kind of layered a little bit in there. That's another thing we could do with that. Yeah, I think we can make that work. So, you know, it's a kind of things you can play with here and there with this, and it gives you something to kind of look at. Alright, so this one here, obviously very simple. Some kind of a print that we will be using with just our letters. Okay, that's one example of you could do this. I'm going to save this as on my computer, and I'm just putting this in my stationery folder. I should make a different folder for it, but I'm not. Alright, and then we would save it as a PSD, so we keep all those layers, and then also as a PNG. And I'm just going to call this one Fly Eagles Fly Typography. When I'm saving these files, I like to keep everything as separate words and to be as descriptive as possible, so that way when I'm searching for this, because my desktop and everything is not well organized, and that way I could type a search for typography and all my things saved typography would come up, and then Fly Eagles Fly, I'd be able to find that quickly. So I'm going to click save, and we got that one done. So that's one example that you could do. Alright, the second example that I was going to show you will be File and New. This one I'm going to make it be a portrait. So I'm going to go 18 wide by 24 tall. Alright, and for this one I want to use a picture for the background, and the quote I want to use like public domain stuff. So I'm going to actually use a Shakespeare quote because his stuff is available for free, and you can search public domain quotes and all those kind of things for typography projects, because maybe this would be something that you would eventually want to put online and sell later, right? And then the other thing I want to do is I'll close out of that. My little plug for Unsplash here. Unsplash.com is free high-resolution images that you can use for your projects. People who sell, you know, online ads or ads in magazines will oftentimes get the photography pictures from this site, and you don't have to give them credit for it. The actual photographer, it's encouraged, but it's not something you have to do. But the images are all high resolution, and they're adding more to them every day, and it's a huge library. And it's probably, as young graphic design students, if you're ever in a pinch for time and you don't have time to go collect your own assets, or you're terrible at photography, this Unsplash page is something where if you need a picture fast and of good quality, you know, you can use this. And I know there's other sites too, like Pixabay, but some of those have little, you have to check and look at those actual licensing rights. On this one, everything on here is free. This picture right here, if I wanted to print this off and sell it in a frame, I could do that and it wouldn't be copyright. Okay, so I'm going to search in here for Lighthouse because I want to use a quote about that refers to lights. I don't want to spend a lot of time looking for these. This one here, so I click on the picture. Alright, and then I can just go up here to download free. It puts it into my downloads folder. Alright, and then in here I can go to my Photoshop. I'll go to File, Place Embedded, like what we've done with some of our other assignments. And if I go to Downloads, and it's that one right there, and what I want to do is actually make this be larger than the actual canvas. I don't want the picture to be distorted, you know what I mean? Sometimes you'll have people try to match all four corners, and if I tried to fit it in there perfectly, the picture is going to be too tall and narrow. You know, it's not going to look right. So that would be a bad thing. Alright, so trying to find a way to put this picture in here. There's a few ways we could do this. I'm just kind of looking to maybe, you know, if you can, if the end of that little house would show up at some point in time, that would be great. You know, I was hoping to do kind of a rule of thirds, but that house is kind of long, so maybe if I move this back over here to the side, something like that. I'm not a real big fan. I could touch that up and remove that house, you know, with like the spot healing brush, but for now, for what I'm doing here, it's okay. Alright, so there's the picture. I am gonna right click and rasterize this picture because I may be doing some things to this image in a little bit. Rasterizing, because it was as a smart object and I want to actually edit the pixels. I do want to go to Image and Adjustments, and I'm going to desaturate this to, you know, make it black and white. And then I'm going to get to my levels, Control L, and this little window comes up, and I think I kind of want to make this a little bit darker for the image. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Then I'll click OK. Alright, then the next thing that I'm going to do here, I'm going to make a new layer. Alright, and this layer is going to have a ellipse, using my white ellipse tool here, or my rectangle ellipse tool, or whatever, dotted ellipse tool, whatever you call it, the dotted circle. I'm going to draw a dotted circle kind of around where the light should be from this. Okay, and I'm going to use Shift Backspace and fill that in with white. Okay, then Control D, and then I can go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Alright, and then I'm just going to kind of get the Gaussian blur to be, I don't know, maybe about 23.5. Alright, just to play around with it. And I can then adjust that opacity, okay, to where I could get it just right. So it's got kind of the light shining in there, giving me a little bit of a glare to it. And then I'm going to make another new layer, and this time I'm going to use my Polygon Lasso tool. And I don't really know how to explain this very well, so I'm just going to do the best I can. I'm going to make one of these, I don't know, kind of like a bow tie shape. That's where the middle of the bow tie is going to intercept where these lights are coming out. Okay, and then I'm going to use Shift Backspace again and fill that in with white. Control D, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Alright, and now you can kind of see what we're doing. I'm going to lower that opacity down just a little bit to where we have it. So there it kind of looks like this lighthouse is lit up, and it makes it look like it's dark a little bit more for the picture. Alright, so now obviously the important part of this is going to be my words. So I'm going to use my type tool here, alright, and clicking here, and I'm going to use this typeface. I'm going to, ooh, that's way too small, not going to go 12. Let's try 24 for now, and we can always resize it later, alright. And actually I am going to right align this one, because this lighthouse kind of gives me a natural boundary of where my words could line up. Alright, so here it is. So I'm going to type in this quote. This isn't word for word, but it's from something similar that Shakespeare wrote. How far that little candle throws its beams, so does, or should I think it's, yeah, so does a good deed in a weary world. Okay, so I do want this to kind of maybe spread out a little bit further. So I might go how far, and then I'm going to press enter here, that little candle, how far that little candle throws its beams, so does a good deed in a weary world. Alright, now I can Control T this, and I can change the size of this a little bit, and then if I hold Control and kind of drag from the side, I can angle this a little bit to kind of match, you know, to make it kind of parallel with that lighthouse a little bit there. You can, with this, use whatever color you want to. I'm going with white because black is going to be a little bit harder to read, okay? But what I could do is I could also lower the opacity of this a little bit. And it kind of shows in decently in there too. You know, that it's just kind of a couple of little things you can do for that. You could also put William Shakespeare down here. You can put quotes, like really big quotes here, and end the quotes down here, and then drop the opacity of those quotes to where you can barely see them. Sometimes you see that in there as well. And you know, I think that kind of works for this. So play around with this method as well, finding some, if you have a quote you really like, or maybe you have a picture that you took that you think is awesome, and then you can find a quote that goes with it, and you can find ways to fit the typography, to fit the typeface and the words and the letters into the picture. And for our class, I'm asking that you use either pictures that you took yourself through your own photography. Obviously, I really encourage that. But otherwise, if you're getting an image from the internet, use Unsplash, so that way we know we're not violating any copyright issues with that. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to File, Save As. And if I go to Save to my computer, and I go to Desktop, and I save that other one in my folder that was stationery. Alright, and then we would save this as a PSD and also as a PNG, and I'm going to call this one Lighthouse Typography and save. Alright, so that's pretty cool. Alright, now the last thing I want to show you for this, just like we did earlier, we made kind of a mock-up of our stationery earlier where it looked like everything was laid out on a table. This is something you can do for the advanced grade to earn something higher than a B. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'll keep this the same size as the other one. I think we did 8 wide by 10 tall. Alright, and it's going to start out the exact same as we did last time. Alright, so for those of you who are in class, this will be nothing new really, but my colors down here in the color selector, black with white, and then I'm going to go to my background layer and go to the gradient overlay, and the blend mode is normal, and the gradient I went to basics and from black to checkered, which is black to transparent, and the opacity right now doesn't matter, but the scale is at 150, and you want to make sure it's lighter in the middle than on the outside. Alright, if yours is flipped, then there's this little reverse check. You just click that button and it'll make it to where yours will be the way that it should be. Now that we got that there, yours should look very similar to this, and I will change opacity to 15%. Alright, and then I'm going to press enter. Okay, now we'll go to File, Place Embedded. I'm going to use the Lighthouse one. I could do either one, but I'm going to choose the Lighthouse one. I'm going to bring that in here. Alright, and I'm going to bring this down to size, and I want to bring it to where it's centered, but it's up a little bit. Okay, right about there. Alright, that's the first thing I want to do. Now what I want to do is I want to make a layer underneath that lighthouse. Alright, so I'm going to select layer 0, then go down here to new layer. Alright, and then this one here, I will actually just use my rectangle marquee tool, and it doesn't have to be exact right now. And I want to go Shift Backspace, and I'm going to fill that in with white. Okay, then Control D. Now I want that to be, now where I can see it, I want to Control T this and make sure it's kind of even on all sides around, from the actual photograph. Alright, and if I double click where it says layer 1 here, I can actually rename this layer. I'm going to call it matte. Alright, this one up here, Lighthouse Typography, I'm going to call this one print. Layer 0, I'm going to call wall. When you start getting projects that have a lot of layers, it's good to name them so that way you can kind of find them. Sometimes when you get to photo manipulations and everything, you may have over 100 layers, and things get a little bit difficult to find if you don't name those. So just kind of keep that in mind. Alright, so that looks pretty centered, I think. I chose white for the matte because it's a contrast from the actual picture itself. Okay, now I want to make a layer underneath matte, so I'm going to select wall again and make another new layer, and this time I'm going to make another dotted rectangle, and this one is going to be just a little bit bigger than the matte, and then I'll Shift Backspace and I'll fill this in with black. Alright, so you can kind of tell what we're doing with this. We're going to make it look like it's actually framed up real nice. So take the time, make sure that the frame is equal sides around also. For those of you who have me in class, sometimes you get tired of me using the phrase pixel perfect, but I mean, we have the tools here to be pixel perfect, so we should do that when it's something we're being graded on, and that's going in our portfolio. The layer 1 I'm going to call frame. Alright, this doesn't look too bad, but here's what I want to do now. I'm going to start with the frame layer, and I'm going to go into the layer style of the frame. Alright, and I'm moving the layer style window here to the side to where I can see my work. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is do Bevel and Emboss. And these are kind of something where it looks a little different every time I try this, and I change my mind how I want it to look. But I'm going to try this first way here to be emboss, and then I'm going to try to chisel this. Alright, the depth, let's see, maybe not emboss. Let's go, let's try this inner bevel, and we'll see what it is. I just want to find how I can get it to look the best on here. And okay, so the size of this, let's try maybe 3. Alright, and maybe here we go. Alright, yeah, this is looking decent. If I bring this highlight mode down here and bring that up to maybe change the highlight mode to normal, and then have this opacity here be up maybe to 100. That is looking better. And then I could have this depth be 75. Yeah, I think that looks alright. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to do. I want to put this bevel and emboss to give this frame here a little bit of a 3D appearance to it. Alright. I also want to drop a shadow behind it. Now normally I would say have the distance be 1, but because this is like it's hanging on a wall and it has some 3D depth to it, I am going to put a little bit of more of a distance behind it with this shadow. So I'm moving the distance to 5 for the size. Maybe I could bring that up to 4. And then the opacity for this, I'm going to bring that, make it a little bit darker, so maybe have that be 65. Okay. Maybe 60. Let me see what 60 looks like. Yeah, I'm going 60. Alright, so yeah, that looks pretty good for the actual frame. So I'm going to click OK. That looks like it's something that's actually hanging on the wall right there. Now what I want to do is go to the matte layer, and this one's easy. I want to go to the shadow, and okay, I do have one here. Inner shadow. I want to select inner shadow. Alright, and this one here is going to be a distance of maybe, We could go 3 probably, I guess. 3. And I want to bring the opacity up of this just a little bit to make the inside of the frame a little bit darker. So maybe I'll have that go to 65. And you can see it kind of makes it look like this mat is set back in the frame, like it's kind of a deep frame where that is. And maybe the size of this one, instead of 7, let's bring that down to 5, and I think that looks pretty good. So I have 5 for the size. The distance I have to 3. I move the opacity to 65, and that looks pretty good. I'll click OK. And then the last one is usually easier. I'm going to go to the print, and I want to go inner shadow. Alright, and this one here, I'm going to change the size of this one to 4 or 3. Let me see how 3 looks. I think 3 looks pretty good. And then the distance for this one, because this would make it look like the mat itself is, it would make it look like the mat itself is right over the covering the paper. Okay, so distance I would say 1 or even 0. In this case, because the picture is so dark, I think I am going to leave the distance of 1 because it shows that shadow in there a little bit better. And we can click OK. Alright, so now when I zoom out and I look at this, this would be a way, you know, if you were selling this on your online shop for your artwork, this could be the thumbnail, you know, and people could say, oh yeah, it's a nice picture, that looks real nice, like if it was actually framed up and hanging on the wall. I'm going to go back to the frame, drop shadow, and maybe lower this down just a little bit to, let's see what 40 looks like. Yeah, I'm going to go 40. Alright. Zoomed out, I think that was a little bit too dark. Alright, and so there we have it. A fairly realistic mock-up here of what your artwork would look like. If I was going to do my eagle picture, you know, or if I wanted to change this later, you know, I could always go in here to my paint bucket tool, and I could paste that color into there that I still had and use my paint bucket tool and then use it on that frame. So I can always change the colors of these things, you know, to whatever I want them to be later, right? So if I wanted to make the eagle one, maybe it would be something more similar to that with the colors. But I find it usually, especially if the picture's black and white and I have the frame black and I have the matte white, it really makes it kind of pop out, and it does kind of give a little bit of an element to realism. So when you're done with this, you'll have your typography project made, whether it's going to be a simple one or one with the image, and then you can frame it up like this, and then you're going to either send it to the Google Classroom or you can email it to me as an attachment. And then also don't forget to include your reflection that explains to me the process of going through this. I'm going to save this as a PNG in the correct folder and call this Lighthouse Typography final product or layout. Either way, so that I have that for later. And there we got it done. So we reviewed a little bit about our typography assignment. This is a couple ways how you can start to pursue that, and I say this every time, but I'm excited to see what you come up with with your work on this. I'll bet they turn out pretty great. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.